I used to think my family was boring in the best possible way. Sunday dinners at my parents' house, the same jokes recycled every year, my younger sister asking for advice she never took. Nothing dramatic. Nothing sharp. I trusted them the way you trust gravity. It's just there. You don't test it. I was 32 when everything broke, though at the time it didn't feel like a break. It felt like static. Little interruptions I couldn't place. My husband, Eric, had started staying late at work on Wednesdays. My sister, Lila, had suddenly become very available to help out with things she'd never cared about before. Dropping off groceries. Watching our dog. Sitting at our kitchen table scrolling on her phone while I cooked. I didn't think anything of it because the idea itself didn't exist in my head. Betrayal was something other families dealt with. Messy families. Loud families. Not us. The first real moment came in a small, stupid way. I was looking for a charger in Eric's car. I opened the center console and saw a receipt folded into a tight square. Hotel parking. Downtown. Wednesday night. The date matched one of his late meetings. When I asked him about it, he didn't miss a beat. Said a client meeting ran long. They grabbed drinks. He parked closer because it was raining. His voice didn't change. His face didn't either. I remember thinking, that's what honesty looks like. I folded the receipt back the same way and put it where I found it, like I was restoring balance. The static didn't stop. A week later, my mother called to ask if Lila could stay with us for a few days. She said Lila was having a hard time and needed space from her apartment. She didn't say why. She never does. Lila showed up with an overnight bag and a smile that felt rehearsed. Eric hugged her a second too long. I noticed it and then immediately told myself not to be weird. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I realized Eric wasn't in bed. I heard the low hum of voices downstairs. I stood at the top of the stairs and listened like a stranger in my own house. Lila's laugh. Eric's voice, softer than I'd heard it with me in months. I went back to bed. I didn't want to know yet. The next morning, I checked our shared iPad. Eric had forgotten to log out of his email. I wasn't snooping for drama. I was looking for confirmation that I was imagining things. Instead, I found a calendar invite titled, Dinner. Private. Repeating weekly. The location was the same hotel on the receipt. The invitee name was saved as L. There were emails too. Not romantic. Practical. Times. Rooms. Complaints about traffic. One message from Eric read, "We have to be careful. She's starting to notice." Lila replied, "Your mom says to stay calm. Don't act guilty." I read that line over and over. Your mom says. By noon, I was shaking so badly I couldn't type. I called my mother. I didn't accuse her. I asked her directly if she knew anything about Eric and Lila. There was a pause. Not confusion. Not anger. A pause where someone decides how much truth to give. She said, "This is complicated. Don't make it uglier than it needs to be." That was the moment something in me shut off. Not rage. Not tears. Just a clean, cold awareness. That evening, I waited until everyone was home. I put the iPad on the table and opened the emails. I asked Lila to explain. She cried. Eric denied it for 30 seconds before switching to excuses. My mother told me to lower my voice. My father stared at the floor. No one apologized first. That was the first night I understood exactly who I was to them. After that night, everyone acted like the truth had been dropped on the table and dealt with, even though nothing had actually been said out loud. That was their pattern. If you don't name it, it doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, no one has to take responsibility. Eric slept on the couch for exactly 2 nights. On the 3rd night, my mother called and told me I was being unnecessarily rigid and that marriages required flexibility. She said that word twice, like it was wisdom instead of a threat. When I didn't respond, she added, "You don't want to be the reason this family falls apart." That sentence landed harder than the emails. Lila avoided me completely. She stayed in her room, ordered takeout, cried loudly enough to be heard but never came out to talk. When she did pass me in the hallway, she wouldn't make eye contact. Like I was the one who had done something shameful. Eric, on the other hand, became cooperative in a way that felt rehearsed. He offered explanations I hadn't asked for. He told me it wasn't planned, that it just happened, that Lila was vulnerable, and that I had been emotionally distant for a while. He said all of this calmly, like he was presenting a case he'd practiced. I asked him one question, how long? He hesitated for the first time. Then he said, since last fall. That meant 10 months. 10 months of hotel rooms, calendar invites. Lies layered so neatly I hadn't felt them until the weight shifted. When I asked if anyone else knew, he said yes immediately. No hesitation this time. My parents. My aunt. 2 cousins. People I'd had dinner with. People who hugged me. People who texted me asking how work was going. I felt stupid in a way I'd never felt before. Not naive. Complicit, without consent. I confronted my parents the next day. I drove to their house alone. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I told them I knew how long it had been going on and who else knew. My mother sat very straight on the couch, hands folded. My father stayed in the kitchen, pretending to wipe down a counter that was already clean. My mother said, "We were trying to protect you." I asked her from what? She said, "From embarrassment." I asked her why my embarrassment mattered more than my autonomy. She didn't answer that. Instead, she told me that Lila had always struggled and that Eric had been a stabilizing presence for her. She said my marriage had been functional but not passionate, and that sometimes people find connection where they're not supposed to. I remember looking at her and realizing she had fully rewritten reality. In her version, no one had betrayed me. I was just failing to be understanding. When I asked why she told them to stay calm, when I started noticing, she didn't deny it. She said she didn't want things to spiral. She said I could be intense and that it was better to manage me than risk drama. Manage me. That word stayed with me. That night, back at home, I told Eric I wanted a divorce. He nodded like he'd been expecting it. He said we could be amicable if I didn't make things difficult. He asked if I planned to tell people. I said no. Not because I was protecting him, but because I finally understood something important. They were all terrified of silence, of things left unsaid but fully known. Lila texted me later that night. A long message about love, confusion, how she never meant to hurt me, how she hoped one day I'd forgive her. She ended it with, "You know, Mom agrees this isn't black and white." I didn't reply. For the first time since this started, I felt something close to clarity. Not relief. Not peace. Just a narrowing of focus. I stopped trying to be heard. I stopped trying to be validated. I started paying attention. Once I stopped reacting, everything changed. Not around me, inside me. The house went quiet in a way that made people nervous. Eric started talking more, filling space. My mother checked in constantly, asking how I was coping, offering help I didn't ask for. Lila stayed invisible. Silence was the only thing I had that they couldn't correct or reframe. I filed for divorce without telling anyone first. Eric found out when he got the papers at work. He came home angry, not devastated. Angry that I hadn't warned him. Angry that I'd taken control of the timeline. He accused me of being vindictive, said I was trying to punish him by making it formal. I told him I was trying to protect myself. He laughed and said, "From what? It's already over." That sentence confirmed something for me. This wasn't an accident that destroyed my marriage. This was a parallel relationship that had already replaced it. I was just the last to be informed. During the separation, Eric stayed at a short-term rental. Lila moved back into my parents' house. I didn't ask if they were seeing each other openly now. I didn't need to. My aunt let it slip during a phone call, saying she was glad they didn't have to sneak around anymore. She said it like a relief. That was when the humiliation set in. Not loud, not dramatic. Just the slow understanding that my private life had been group knowledge. That jokes had probably been made. That there were moments I wasn't in the room for where my pain was hypothetical, inconvenient, or boring. I met with a lawyer and learned just how prepared Eric had been. He'd moved money months earlier. Not illegally, but strategically. Accounts I didn't monitor closely. Investments he'd framed as simplifying. I realized the affair wasn't the only secret. It was just the one involving my sister. When I confronted him about the finances, he didn't deny that either. He said he assumed things might get messy and wanted to be cautious. He asked me not to take it personally. He said anyone would have done the same. That was his favorite move. Normalize the damage. My parents urged me to keep things out of court. My mother warned me that dragging this out would make me look bitter. She said Lila was already fragile and that public conflict could push her too far. I asked her if anyone was worried about pushing me. She said, "You're stronger." That was the excuse they'd always used. Strength as a justification for neglect. A week later, I ran into Lila at a grocery store near my office. She froze when she saw me, then walked over like she'd rehearsed it. She looked thinner, tired. She said she missed me. She said she hated how things turned out. She said she never meant to take my life. I told her she didn't take it. She stepped into it while I was still standing there. She started crying, loud enough that people turned to look. I stayed calm. I asked her one question. When was the first time she slept with my husband? She whispered, "At Mom's house." That detail landed differently than everything else. Not a hotel. Not a mistake after drinks. My parents' guest room. A house I'd slept in countless times. A place I thought of as neutral ground. She said it happened after a family dinner. Everyone else was asleep. She said she'd felt seen for the first time in years. She said she hadn't planned it. I told her I believed she hadn't planned it. I also told her she'd continued it for 10 months, lied to my face, and let our parents cover for her. I told her those were choices. She asked if I hated her. I said no, and I meant it. Hate requires engagement. I was past that. That night, I wrote down everything I knew. Dates. Names. Who said what? Who stayed quiet? I didn't do it to expose anyone. I did it because I needed a record that couldn't be rewritten later. That was the night my thinking shifted from survival to strategy. Once I started documenting things, I noticed how quickly people tried to control the narrative. Not publicly, privately. Subtle edits. Selective memories. My mother stopped using words like affair and started calling it a situation. My father told me I was reading too much into comments that had been said directly to my face. Eric told mutual friends we had been growing apart for years, and that the divorce was mutual. I didn't correct anyone. That confused them. Lila tried to reinsert herself into my life in small ways. She'd like my social media posts. She'd text me articles about healing. Once, she left a handwritten note on my car saying she hoped I was finding peace. The handwriting was the same one she'd used to write notes to Eric, which I'd seen in the emails. That detail made my stomach turn in a way I didn't show. My mother invited me to lunch and framed it as a reset. She told me she wanted to move forward as a family. She said holding on to anger would age me. She said people were starting to ask questions, and it would be better if we all presented a united front. I asked her whose front that was. She sighed and said I was being difficult again. At that lunch, she admitted something without realizing it was a confession. She said when Eric first told them about the affair, she'd advised him not to tell me right away. She said I was under a lot of stress at work at the time and that it would have derailed me. She said they planned to wait until things settled. I asked what settled meant. She said, until Lila figured out what she wanted. That was when I fully understood my position in the hierarchy. I was the stable one, the adjustable one, the one whose pain could be delayed for the convenience of others. Eric called me that night, irritated. He said my mother told him I was being hostile. He said he was worried I was going to poison the family against him. The irony didn't register with him at all. He asked if we could sit down and clear the air. I agreed. We met at a cafe we used to go to on Sundays. Neutral territory. He ordered the same drink as always. He looked comfortable. Too comfortable. He told me he didn't regret what happened with Lila. He said it had shown him parts of himself he'd been suppressing. He said I deserved someone who could meet me emotionally, implying that he couldn't. Like that was an apology. I asked him if he planned to stay with her. He said yes. I asked if he planned to bring her to family gatherings. He hesitated, then said eventually yes. I nodded and told him that was good to know. He looked relieved, like he'd passed a test. He said he hoped in time we could all be adults about it. That word again. Adult. As if silence and compliance were maturity. A few days later, my father called. He doesn't call often. He told me I should consider reconciliation, not with Eric, but with the family. He said holding on to distance would make things awkward long term. He said I didn't want to be the one who broke the family apart. I told him I wasn't breaking anything. I was stepping away from something already broken. There was a long pause. Then he said quietly, "You know, we'll always choose your sister. She needs us more." He didn't mean it cruelly. That was the worst part. It was just a fact to him. I hung up and sat in my car for a long time. That was the moment the last emotional thread snapped. Not anger. Not grief. Just detachment. Clean and absolute. From that point on, I stopped asking for fairness. I stopped expecting acknowledgement. I started thinking about outcomes. Detachment gave me clarity. Clarity gave me patience. I didn't cut anyone off dramatically. I didn't announce boundaries or make speeches. I just became less available. Shorter replies. Polite distance. I stopped initiating contact. People notice that faster than anger. It unsettles them because they can't argue with it. The divorce moved forward quietly. Eric pushed for mediation, framing it as keeping things respectful. I agreed and let him think that was a concession. In reality, I already had copies of everything. Financial records, emails, calendar logs. Not enough to destroy him, but enough to remind him I wasn't uninformed. During mediation, he tried to charm the room. He talked about wanting what was fair. He mentioned how emotionally demanding I could be. He implied that Lila and I had always had a complicated dynamic. The mediator nodded sympathetically. I waited. When it was my turn, I spoke plainly. I didn't mention the affair at all. I focused on numbers, timelines, contributions. I asked specific questions about transfers he'd hoped I wouldn't notice. I watched his posture change as he realized I wasn't there to debate feelings. I was there to finalize outcomes. We settled faster after that. My mother grew more anxious as the divorce neared completion. She called more often. She asked what I was telling people. She asked if I was okay. She asked if I'd thought about therapy, like my calm was a symptom to be treated. She invited me to a family dinner and said Lila wouldn't be there. I declined. She asked why. I told her I didn't feel comfortable pretending anymore. She said, "No one's asking you to pretend." That lie was almost impressive. Lila sent me another message longer than the last. She said she felt like she was being punished forever for one mistake. She said our parents were stressed. She said Eric was struggling with guilt. She said she missed having a sister. I didn't respond, but I saved the message. Not out of spite. Out of pattern recognition. What they wanted wasn't forgiveness. It was normalization. They wanted the timeline accelerated, so my discomfort wouldn't slow their new arrangement. My silence wasn't neutral to them. It was resistance. The first rail crack appeared at my cousin's wedding. I debated not going, but I wanted to see how things looked from the outside. Eric was there with Lila. They arrived together. She wore a dress I'd once lent her. My mother introduced them to people as together, watching my face for a reaction. I smiled. I congratulated the bride. I stayed exactly as long as I needed to. I didn't leave early. I didn't cause a scene. I let them sit with the awkwardness of my composure. Later, my aunt cornered me near the bathrooms and asked how I was handling everything. I told her I was fine. She said she admired my strength. She said she didn't know how I could be so calm. I told her calm didn't mean forgiving. That comment traveled faster than anything else I'd said since this began. The next day, my mother called, furious. She accused me of turning the family against Lila by planting ideas. She said my silence was manipulative. She said if I had a problem, I should say it directly instead of making everyone uncomfortable. I told her I had said it directly. Many times. I reminded her of the night I put the emails on the table. I reminded her of her advice to manage me. I reminded her of her choice. She said, "You're punishing us." I said, "No. I'm opting out." That was the first time I heard fear in her voice. I realized then that my absence carried more weight than my anger ever had. They could rewrite a story. They couldn't rewrite a vacuum. That's when I started making decisions that had nothing to do with healing and everything to do with leverage. Leverage didn't look dramatic. It looked boring. Paperwork. Timing. Restraint. I finalized the divorce 6 weeks later. Eric wanted to celebrate being free. He texted me a thank you message for being reasonable. I didn't reply. That bothered him more than any argument ever had. He needed me to confirm his version of events, and I wasn't participating. A month after the divorce was finalized, my parents hosted a large family gathering. Birthdays stacked together. An excuse to reassemble the group and see how the new configuration held up. I wasn't invited directly. My mother asked my aunt to float the idea and see if I was open to coming. I said yes. That surprised them. When I arrived, everything slowed down. Conversations dipped. My mother hugged me too tightly. My father looked relieved. Lila stayed close to Eric, like physical proximity could anchor her. I greeted everyone politely. No warmth. No hostility. Just presence. About an hour in, my mother pulled me aside and asked if we could talk privately. She said she needed reassurance that I wasn't holding on to resentment. She said people were nervous. She said Lila was on edge and needed to feel accepted. I told her I wasn't resentful. She relaxed visibly. Then I added, I'm just observant now. Her expression shifted. She asked what that meant. I said it meant I noticed who checked in on me without asking for updates on Lila. I noticed who avoided eye contact. I noticed who framed what happened as a love story instead of a betrayal. I told her observation didn't require commentary. She accused me of being passive-aggressive. I told her I was being accurate. Later that evening, I overheard Eric talking to my cousin in the kitchen. He said the affair had been messy but necessary. He said Lila and I had always competed, and that this was just the fallout. He said I was emotionally rigid, and that's why things ended. I stepped into the room and asked him to repeat that. He froze. My cousin backed away immediately. Eric laughed nervously and said he didn't mean it the way it sounded. I asked him how it sounded. He said like he was blaming me. I asked him if he was. He said no. I asked him if he would have slept with my sister if he thought I'd been more flexible. He didn't answer. That silence did more damage than shouting ever could. My mother rushed in and told us to stop. She said this wasn't the time or place. I agreed and walked away. I didn't push. I didn't escalate. I let the moment hang unfinished. That night, my phone started buzzing. Messages from relatives asking if I was okay. Asking if I wanted to talk. Asking what really happened. I responded carefully. I didn't vent. I didn't exaggerate. I answered direct questions with direct facts. Dates. Decisions. Who knew? Who stayed silent? I didn't editorialize. By the end of the week, the family dynamic had shifted in a way no one could openly acknowledge. Lila stopped coming to gatherings. Eric stopped being invited. My parents grew quieter, more cautious. They realized too late that controlling information only works when one person is emotional and the other is not. My mother called me one night, exhausted. She said she felt like she was losing everyone. She asked if this was what I wanted. I told her no. I told her this was what happened when you choose convenience over integrity long enough that people start comparing notes. She cried. She said she didn't recognize me anymore. I told her she finally was. That was when I understood the revenge wasn't something I needed to plan. It was something I had already set in motion by refusing to lie for them. And I wasn't done yet. By the time people started comparing notes, I was already gone emotionally. Not withdrawn in a dramatic way, just absent where it mattered. I stopped showing up to anything that required me to play a role. I didn't correct lies unless asked directly. I didn't volunteer context. I let inconsistencies do the work for me. That's the thing my family never understood about me. I don't need to convince people. I just need to stop buffering reality for them. My mother tried one last reset. She invited me over alone. No one else, framed as just us. She cooked my favorite meal like muscle memory could override damage. She talked about work, about neighbors, about nothing. Finally, she asked if I thought we'd ever be close again. I told her honestly that closeness required trust, and trust required accountability, and I wasn't interested in negotiating definitions anymore. She asked what accountability looked like to me. I said it looked like her saying out loud that she helped hide an affair between my husband and my sister, that she prioritized Lila's comfort over my consent, and that she would do it again if faced with the same choice. She stared at me for a long time. Then she said, "I did what I thought was best for the family." That was her answer. I nodded. I told her that was all I needed to know. I thanked her for dinner and left. I didn't cry in the car. I didn't call anyone. I just drove home and slept better than I had in months. A week later, I heard from my aunt that Eric and Lila were having problems. He didn't like how dependent she was. She didn't like how emotionally distant he'd become now that secrecy was gone. Apparently, the intensity that bonded them during the affair didn't translate well into daylight. That information didn't make me feel vindicated. It made me feel confirmed. Eric texted me late one night, clearly drunk. He said he felt like he'd ruined everything. He said he missed how steady things used to be with me. He said he wondered if we'd rushed into divorce. I didn't reply. The next morning, Lila emailed me. Not texted. Emailed. Like a formal appeal. She said she felt abandoned by everyone. She said Mom was cold now, critical in ways she'd never been before. She said Eric blamed her for the fallout. She said she thought I'd understand what it was like to be the scapegoat. That one almost made me laugh. I responded once. One sentence. I told her she wasn't being punished. She was being seen without protection for the first time. She didn't reply. From that point on, things accelerated without me touching them. My parents' marriage grew tense. My father started pushing back on my mother in small ways. He stopped deferring. He stopped smoothing things over. I later learned he'd been quietly resentful for years about how much emotional labor he'd been asked to absorb in the name of keeping peace. Lila moved out again. Eric didn't follow. People who'd stayed neutral began reaching out to me directly. Not to gossip, to check in. To say they were sorry. To say they hadn't realized how much had been hidden. I accepted apologies without warmth or punishment. I wasn't collecting allies. I was closing chapters. The final shift came unexpectedly. My mother called and asked if I could help her draft a message to Lila. She said she didn't know how to talk to her anymore without fighting. She said everything felt fragile. I told her I couldn't help with that. She asked why. I said because for the first time in my life, she was experiencing the consequences of emotional mismanagement without someone absorbing the impact for her. I told her it was uncomfortable, but it was honest. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "So this is it?" I said yes. That was the moment I felt something settle permanently. Not triumph. Not sadness. Finality. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. I wasn't estranged. I wasn't dramatic. I was simply no longer available to be used as ballast. And there was still one thing left to do. The last thing left wasn't confrontation. It was closure, and not the kind people talk about like a gift you give yourself. This was logistical. Precise. Quiet. I changed my phone number first. Not out of fear, out of control. I forwarded only a few contacts. Work. 2 friends who had never asked me to soften my language. Everyone else could reach me by email if it was necessary. Most things aren't. Then I moved. Not far. Same city, different rhythm. New routines. New grocery store. New gym. I stopped orbiting places that carried shared history. It wasn't dramatic. It was maintenance. Eric noticed eventually. He emailed me asking if I'd blocked him. He said he needed to talk about something important. I waited 2 days before replying. I told him communication should go through email unless it was a legal emergency. He replied immediately. He said Lila was pregnant. I read that sentence 3 times. Not because it shocked me, but because it clarified everything all at once. The rush. The secrecy. The way my mother had pushed so hard for normalization. This hadn't been about love. It had been about damage control. I asked one question, did our parents know? He said yes. Before me. That was the final confirmation. Not of betrayal, I already had that, but of pattern. The order of importance had never changed. Information flowed upward and sideways. Never to me, unless it became unavoidable. I didn't respond after that. The news traveled anyway. Carefully. Strategically. My mother emailed me a week later with the subject line "Life Update." She framed it as a blessing. A chance for healing. She said becoming an aunt might bring us back together. I replied once. I told her I wished them health and stability. I told her I wouldn't be involved. I told her not to interpret that as anger. She called me immediately. She cried. She said I was being cruel. She said this was bigger than me. She said family means showing up even when it's uncomfortable. I told her family also means not lying to someone's face for 10 months while sleeping their husband in your guest room and coordinating the fallout behind their back. She went quiet. Then she said, "I didn't think you'd hold on to it this long." That sentence ended whatever was left between us. I told her I wasn't holding on to anything. I was letting go of the role I'd been assigned. The one who absorbs shock so others don't have to. After that, communication stopped. Not dramatically. Just cleanly. No more invitations framed as olive branches. No more updates. No more pressure to participate in a story I didn't consent to. Months passed. The baby was born. I heard through a cousin. Eric and Lila weren't together anymore. That didn't matter to me. Their relationship had never been the center of the betrayal. The system that protected it was. I ran into my father once by accident at a hardware store. He looked older. Smaller. He asked how I was. I told him the truth calm. He said he was proud of me, quietly, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to say it. I told him I hoped he was okay. That was all. The strangest part was how ordinary my life became. No chaos. No revenge fantasy. Just days that belonged to me. Mornings without tension. Evenings without decoding subtext. I hadn't won anything. I just stopped losing myself. Sometimes people ask if I regret not exposing them publicly. I don't. Exposure would have let them argue, deny, perform remorse. Silence forced them to live with what they did without my participation. The last message I ever received from my mother came months later. One line. No apology. Just a statement. I hope one day you understand why we made the choices we did. I didn't reply. Understanding was never the problem. By the time a year had passed, people assumed the situation had settled. That's the word they like to use when no one is actively screaming anymore. Settled means inconvenient emotions have been successfully ignored. I didn't correct that either. What actually happened was simpler. I became ungovernable. Without family pressure shaping my choices, my decisions got quieter and more deliberate. I changed jobs. Not out of escape, but precision. I took a role with less visibility and more autonomy. Fewer meetings. More control over my time. It suited the version of me that didn't need external validation to feel real. The family tried one last indirect pull. A cousin reached out, said there was talk of a reconciliation dinner. Neutral ground. No accusations. Just moving forward. She asked if I'd consider attending, even briefly, for my parents' sake. I asked her one question. Had anyone involved acknowledged what they did without justifying it? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I don't think they're capable of that." I thanked her for her honesty and declined. After that, the invitation stopped. What surprised me wasn't the loss. It was how quickly the space filled with something else. Not replacement relationships. Just depth. Conversations that didn't require translation. Friendships that didn't hinge on my ability to absorb discomfort. I hadn't realized how much of my emotional energy had gone into stabilizing other people's dysfunction. One afternoon, I received an email from Eric's lawyer. Not hostile. Administrative. He needed a signature on a document related to a minor asset we'd overlooked. I signed it and sent it back within an hour. Eric followed up personally, thanking me. He added a line at the end, "I hope you know I never meant to hurt you." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I deleted it. Intent had never been the point. Impact was. And his inability to understand that, even now, was the final proof that leaving had been the only rational choice. I heard through the same cousin that my mother had started therapy. She apparently talked about me often. About losing me. About how distant I'd become. She framed it as grief, not consequence. I wasn't surprised. What she never talked about, according to the cousin, was her role in orchestrating the silence. Not the advice to lie. Not the management. Not the hierarchy. Those details didn't fit the story where she was a misunderstood matriarch who just wanted harmony. I didn't need her to change. I needed her to stop accessing me. And she did. The last real moment came quietly. I was cleaning out old files when I found the notebook where I'd written everything down. Dates, conversations, names. The record I'd created to protect reality from revision. I read through it once, slowly. Then I shredded it. Not because it wasn't true, but because I no longer needed proof. The truth had already done its work. It had rearranged relationships, exposed weaknesses, revealed who relied on my silence to function. The revenge, if you could call it that, wasn't visible. It didn't look like punishment. It looked like removal. They went on without me, and everything they'd built on my compliance started sagging under its own weight. I went on without them, and nothing collapsed. That was the difference. The last time I saw my mother was 2 years after everything ended. Not at a holiday. Not at a family event. It was at a hospital cafeteria. She was there with my aunt. I was there because a friend was having surgery. Wrong place, wrong time, no buffer. She looked startled when she saw me, like she'd run into a ghost she assumed had moved on. We stood there for a moment, both holding coffee we didn't want. She asked how I was. I told her I was well. I meant it. There was no edge in my voice. No performance. She told me she thought about me all the time. She said she missed me. She said the family didn't feel the same anymore. She said things had gotten complicated. I nodded. I didn't apologize. I didn't reassure her. Then she said something I hadn't expected. She said, "If I'm honest, I didn't think you'd actually leave. I thought you'd be upset for a while, but eventually you'd come back and things would adjust." That was the most truthful thing she'd ever said to me. I told her that was exactly why I had to go. I told her I realized too late that my role in the family wasn't loved. It was relied upon. I was the one who absorbed discomfort so others could avoid change. I told her once I saw that clearly, I couldn't unsee it. She asked if there was any chance we could rebuild. I said rebuilding requires dismantling first, and no one had done that work. I told her distance wasn't a punishment. It was the natural result of choosing myself after years of being chosen last. She cried quietly. Not theatrically. Not manipulatively. Just tired. For a moment, I almost felt something like pity. But pity isn't a foundation either. We said goodbye. No promises. No follow-ups. I walked back to the waiting room and sat down. My phone buzzed with a message from a friend asking if I wanted dinner later. I said yes. Just yes. No hesitation. That's how my life works now. Clean answers. Clear choices. Sometimes people expect me to say I'm healed, or stronger, or grateful for the experience. I don't say any of that. What I am is finished. Finished explaining. Finished accommodating. Finished carrying stories that were never mine to begin with. The betrayal didn't ruin me. It revealed the cost of staying. Walking away was the only move that didn't require permission. And once I took it, everything else fell silent in the best possible way.